All right, we're back again. Sooner than later this time, right? I'm going to feature some other masks that came in from Frank's collection, the Frankenshrine. Boy, that video went over very well. Great comments, but I was getting a lot of private messages and text messages from like old-time guys in the hobby. I don't want to call them old-timers, but old, like the OGs. And for you OGs that don't know what the hell that even means, you're the original gangsters in the mask hobby. The OGs, the original gangsters. Anyway, there was an outpouring of great comments from the people that knew Frank in the old days, so it was really neat seeing how well that video did. And I'm going to talk about some more stuff tonight. This time, we're going to look at some Don Post masks that I brought back from the Frankenshrine. So, one of them being a Frankenstein monster, and another being one of my favorite science fiction characters of all time. Technically, I call it a monster, the Metaluna Mutant. You know I love them. If you've watched my old videos, you'll know I love Metaluna Mutant masks a lot. And I got one that I never thought I would own in a million years. And I'll tell you the story on that right now. Here we go. Alright, so look at this guy. Boy, oh boy. So, I was saying I bought a mask that I thought I would never own in a million years. And I'll explain what I meant. Okay, Frank had this great mutant in his collection under a plastic bag, sitting on a shelf since the 80s when he bought it from another friend of mine. Like, I know the origins of this mask, but I didn't realize exactly which one it was when I kept looking at it. Because Frank, like I was saying, liked customization on his pieces. He liked custom paint jobs. And back in the day, factory paint jobs weren't, a big deal if a mask was sort of new or even 10 years old, So, for many years on the old HMA site, my buddy Maskahuna, we'll just say his screen name, would post amazing old photographs of masks he had in the, late 60s, early 70s, in the 80s. And he would always post this photo of this really great Metaluna Mutant. And it had the first tricolor paint job where it was like a base color green, I think with some red on it, and then silver veins. Just such a cool version of the 60s sculpt mutant. This is the 60s sculpt, okay? This predates the 1975 Bill Malone sculpt. That's red and blue. So in the 60s sculpt, Post never made a red and blue version like this, like you see in the film, those colors, they're red and blue. Everyone knows that movie monster as being red and blue. So Frank had this mask customized by, I believe, Jim Lawrence many years ago in the 80s. And not only did he repaint the mask completely, but he put these plastic lenses in the eyes that I have removed. I've since removed them. I'm going to show you what this looked like when it came in. I'm in the process of still working on this mask with heat treatments. So over time, I mean, this is what happens to these masks, okay? You hear that? It's hardened. It's pretty stiff, okay? Like hard plastic now. The latex has aged, and it's a stiff, hard mask now. But in time, these nice circular eyes and the whole front of this mask will actually literally just slowly droop with gravity. And They look good now, but they were more egg-shaped when this thing came in. I'm going to show you the before photo. So look at this. And you see those lenses were in there. I took them out, and I've been doing heat treatments on this, getting these eyes rounder again, making them look like they should, more circular. I still have some more to go, but you can see it's definitely improving over that old original look where they just drooped in time and sagged. You get the whole thing just sagging, especially because these old mutant masks at Don Post Studios, they filled the tops with polyfoam inside. All right, I'm gonna show you this. They did this. See that foam down in there? The whole top of the head is foamed. So the reason for that is so this thing would sit on your head. You know, your eyes would be, there's little holes that you don't see right now, but the foam would sit on top of your head and it would sit nicely. And the fact that they did foam these from the factory in the tops, usually if you ever find these masks, the tops are beautiful and the bottoms are all messed up. In this case, this one's pretty damn nice, you know. So the neck has the sagging on the sides, and the bottom was really mushroomed out more flat. And I've been working at getting it back to its normal shape with heat. It's taking a lot of heat to warm this sucker up and get it soft, because it's hard, but it will soften up. It's crazy. So, like I was saying, I knew what this thing looked like. He had it custom painted. I knew that, but I did not realize this was the mask I would drool over when Maskahuna would post the old picture of this, like in the 70s, of it sitting in his yard in Beverly Hills, California. And it's the one with the stripes, the silver veins and everything, that original green mask, which is, to me, I'm missing that one. I do not have that one in my collection. Technically, I do now. Like, this is that mask. You know, I kept thinking, you know, I knew it was customized, but I really forgot the fact that they never made a blue and red one until recently when I was talking with Maskahuna. And I'm like, you know what, you're right. They did not make this color scheme in the 60s mask. It looked like that old photo. And this is one of the times that I don't agree with Frank on repainting something, because I love that original one so much. But he wanted, I know Frank, he wanted this to resemble the movie monster as close as it could. So he had it custom painted the blue and red and have those lenses added. So, I mean, this paint is aged beautifully. Like, this mask is so cool. That blue and red paint, you can just tell it's super old. And I mean, I'm so tempted to put the silver veins back on it and make it look like aged silver paint. I can do that. I can do it where that silver won't be super bright and just make it look like it's kind of aged. I think I don't know. I mean, it's already custom painted. It's a 50-50 coin toss here whether I'm doing that or not. But what I have been doing so far, I've been doing some heat treatments and I've been cleaning this thing. It's been really dusty. Even though it was under a plastic bag, there were times it probably was not. And I'm taking my brushes and I'm gently cleaning all the dust out of the cracks with little moist hard bristle brushes, you know, getting this thing cleaned up. And you can see there's like some, you know, dust still in some of the cracks here. But this thing is super, super cool. And even though it was a 60s sculpt, that tricolor paint scheme, I think, came out around 1970. All right. Let's take a walk over here real quick. Oh, look who's back. So I always felt that this green one was the first version that Post put out. They did the green base with just the one color veins, and it was a very simple paint up way before they decided to do three colors on this mask. This, I believe, is a 1966 release Metaluna Mutant. Not to mention, I bought it with another 1966 Wolfman, so I mean, it really fits in that is probably that mid-60s mask. In 67, they totally changed it up to this green and red, and there's other color in here, okay? It was all, like, they used 3 colors here next, like 66 to 67. We know this is 67 because there was another one that exists of this, another copy that was in a brand new, it was brand new in a box in a closet. Joel Grossman had it, and it literally had like a tag on the box, dated 1967 from Don Post Studios. We absolutely know that's 67 paint scheme, okay? This had to predate that because there was only 2 colors on it, you know what I mean? Like, there was a more simple paint up. I think, you know, the next year they said, hey, let's make it a little nicer. Let's add a 3rd color to that thing. But it wasn't until later, you know, closer to 1970, 69, 70, 71, who knows, that they did the one in the old photo I showed you with the 3 colors. And, I mean, that one is so cool. I know a couple out there in collections that will never sell them to me. Good friend of mine has one. Shout out to Pete Roberts. What are you doing? You don't touch the shelves. You don't, no. So this is a beautiful mask. It has its little issues, but so did the green one. The green one was egg-shaped when I got it. I really made it look better, as you know. And this thing will look so cool displayed with those other 2 60s sculpt mutants. And I'm telling you, since it's not the factory finish, I may do the silver veins on it and make it look really wild. We will see. All right, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna put the other 2 out here and just see what they look like together. I have not done that yet. I'm dying to see the 3 of them lined up, so let me grab them. Look at that. That is that is a really rare sight. Holy cow. 360s sculpt mutants. This one, unfortunately, is the worst one. You know, it was repaired years ago. It's actually got part of a coffee can as its inside structure, which was a great idea. I mean, that totally helps give it strength, you know, behind the latex neck. But it's not bad. I mean, it's not terrible. But as you can see, these should have a nice shape to them when they're new, you know. This one's a little warped. I'm going to try to improve his features with heat. Not bad though. And then we've got this one here that's just widened a little bit, but I tell you what, I'm thrilled that I own that thing. So that is cool. That is something I don't think you'll really see anywhere else. 360s sculpt Metaluna Mutants by Don Post Studios. All right, and this definitely came out of the Frankenshrine, and I'm gonna tell you guys one day my experience on first seeing this and other beautiful Don Post masks for the first time, and what I did that day. You guys will love the story and seeing the photos. All right, on to the next piece. All right, if you watched my 31 days of Halloween masks on the channel during the month of October, you'll remember this Lugosi mask, this Dracula mask. In the 1960s, I believe 1964, Don Post made the Hollywood Horrors line. The Hollywood Horrors line, and this mask was part of that line. To my knowledge, there's none that exist, okay, of that original line. In 1983, they pulled the original Hollywood Horrors mold out, made a casting in 83. This is that prototype. Painted it, haired it up to show to Universal Studios to reboot. They were going to reboot classic Universal Monsters for their 83 line. And the Lugosi estate, like Lugosi's son, said, no way, no you're not. And the whole project was shut down as far as this mask. They did other classic Universal monsters in 83. They brought them back, but this was not going to happen. So this was a prototype. So to my knowledge, this was the only factory poured mask from that original 60s mold since the 1960s. You know, absolute factory prototype. However, rewind a little bit, around 1980 or 1981, that mold, somebody somewhere made another copy out of that mold, and it is sitting right here. Look at this. This beautiful pull from the same Hollywood Horrors 1960s mold has been sitting in the Frankenshrine, gosh, since probably 1986, I'm guessing, 85 or 86. This came from a very good friend of mine to Frank back then in the mid 80s, where it sat and sat and sat in his collection for all these years. You know, these are very rare castings out of that mold. They just, who knows how many are on the planet? Not many, you know, a small handful out of that 60s mold. I guarantee you, if this one exists, they probably pumped out a few more at the time. And this thing has such unique coloring because this was painted by Rick Stratton, okay? He, you know, I've said it before in the other video, look up his IMDb. Rick Stratton has worked on many amazing Hollywood films, makeup, special effects, artist, one of the best. And he actually was painting at Don Post for a time, you know, years and years ago. He was actually painting for Don Post back in the day, and I'm assuming he probably painted this on the side, because this was not a factory mask by any means. It wasn't a prototype. It was not, you know, the people at Don Post probably do not know this was made at the time. This is probably like made out the back door. Get it? So, I know that the hair work, this is the hair work of Mask Kahuna. I could tell instantly how perfect, you know, his Frankenstein hair, his Dracula hair is the best I've seen, you know, on these old Post masks. He really just makes them gorgeous. And Rick Stratton, you know, being the makeup, you know, wizard he is and was back then, he had an edge over other mask painters at the time because he understood highlights and shadow a lot more than your average guy painting a mask. So when you see masks painted by Rick Stratton, they just look so much different. I mean, look at the difference in these two masks, you know. It's night and day. Just the, you know, that one's amazing, but the difference in the shadows and the detailing. Not to mention this pull, meaning pull out of that old plaster mold, is actually more detailed than the prototype. It's just a nicer casting, man. I mean, that old plaster mold, the more you pull out of that mold, the more details it loses each time. You know what I mean? So by the time they got to 83, they were pulling these out. Before that, in the early like 80, 81 probably. And by the time you got to this point, it lost even more detail. But, you know, very, very rare Draculas that you will not see, I mean, anywhere. These are very, very rare Lugosi Dracula castings that are just amazing. Look at the nice detailing here. That is straight from that production mold from Don Post Studios. You could just tell. That was a gorgeous, gorgeous piece. So, I know Frank loved this mask. We've talked about it over the years, and I would go over there. He'd let me take it down off the shelf. It sat under a plastic bag. I mean, the hair, just remember, this sat in his collection since probably 86. I mean, there's barely any specks of dust in this hair or anything, so I know he always kept this thing under plastic. which is just amazing. And it sits in the glass cases now over there with this other prototype, but it's gorgeous. All right, I'm gonna show you one more amazing Don Post mask out of the Frankenshrine. Let's go get it. Look at this. So this, to most of you, might look like just some regular old gray Frankenstein head. However, this is a special one, okay? This is another prototype, a factory Don Post Studios prototype, made once again in 1983, along with that little other Lugosi head that was sitting on the left here, all right? Don Post Studios, like I was saying, wanted to resurrect Universal Monsters in 83 to bring them back. You know, they sold them in the 60s. They sold some in the 70s. However, they wanted to get licensing once again to release, you know, Frankenstein, the Creature, Dracula masks in 1983. So, this, my friends, is an actual pull from the 1966 Pat Newman Glenn Strange Frankenstein, the calendar mask, okay? There are none out there. There's one I've ever seen in my life, one original 60s casting. I had it in my hands. I'll see if I can dig up that photo. It's sitting in a friend's collection, and I'm gonna see if he's gonna sell it to me. I'm gonna bother him for it. But this is, I want to say, the next best thing to having one. You'll see my friend's is distorted and it's, you know, it's beat up. This is a beautiful factory pull, foam filled, back in the 80s, with perfect shape to it, okay? I mean, it is, look how nice and flat the top of that head is. Now, some of you may remember there is another factory prototype out of the same mold right there. But however, this one, guys, was cast in 1997, 98, right before 98. So I would say 97. As this also came out of the 60s Pat Newman Glenn Strange Frankenstein mold, okay? The calendar mold. But the one on the left, the one cast in the early 80s, has better, sharper details than the one pulled in 97 or 98. Study those, all right? It's crazy to have one of these, but to have two of them is unbelievable, all right? Just, if you're a Don Post fanatic like myself, this is incredible, all right? Because there are the calendar masks are some of the most sought after and rarest Don Post masks in the history of this whole thing, okay? There just are not out there. Like I said, I know of one, okay? In all my years of looking at these masks and researching them and finding them, I've only seen one ever, and that was a miracle that it's sitting in my friend's collection in Illinois. So there's a funny story with this one, though, with Frank and I. But now I look back and laugh. Frank and I, we had a very unique friendship, you know. There were times we would be very serious, you know, and we're talking about movies and certain things. We would talk about our private lives, you know, things going on. But there were times we would laugh, and there were times that I would just straight up get yelled at. Frank would yell at me, you know, and all in, you know, he was a big teddy bear, but he could also be a real bear, you know. He would get on my case, you know. But this time, I'm gonna tell you the story, okay? I'll tell you what happened, because now I look back and I laugh. All right, so I saw this in his collection, and when I show you guys where I originally saw this, how I first came to see this with other masks, It was so amazing. It was like, believe me, I documented everything, okay? It was like Indiana Jones finding the Ark of the Covenant when I walked in and saw these masks on this one shelf, all under plastic bags, not knowing what they were, and I was peeking under these bags. Each time I would lift a bag, I was blown away. And this was one of them, okay? So, in time, I talked to my friend that originally sold this to Frank in the 80s, and that's when I learned that it was that prototype, that 83 proto, and it definitely came out of that Pat Newman mold, that 60s calendar mold, right? And Frank knew I was a fanatic, a Frankenstein mask fanatic, like the Frankenstein masks, vintage Frankenstein masks are everything to me in this collection. I've got some great ones, and my sights went in on this mask, okay? And I'm like, Frank, keep in mind, Frank, this is a person that collected his whole life since the 70s and rarely ever sold anything. He would only sell something if he really had a double. If he had two of them for some reason, he would say, well, maybe I'll sell it, maybe. The man kept everything for years and years and just did not really care to sell anything. So I begged him. I go, please sell me this Glenn Strange. I love it so much. And I said, I will pay you an amazing price on it. I offered him a lot of money for it, And he would think about it. This went on for months, okay? I said, we'd talk, and I think he would just kind of blow me off in time, like, oh yeah, we'll get to that, and then we wouldn't talk about it anymore. Then of course I would just bring it up. And finally, one day, he said, I really want to buy this amazing Hellraiser bust, this crazy pinhead bust it was a lot of money. It was amazing. It was probably a sideshow piece or something crazy like that. And he goes, it's so expensive though, I said, I have a solution for you. I can help you pay for that thing if you sell me that Glenn Strange mask. All right, you will get the extra money needed, and you can buy that amazing pinhead bust, And he called me back later on that night, and he goes, all right, I'll sell you the Strange. And I was just so overwhelmed. I'm like, oh my God, thank you, Frank, thank you so much. I go, it's going to a good home. I will take such good care of it, blah, 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 blah. I said, I'm leaving on a trip to China. I was going to China for like 14 days or something. I said, I'm going to China. So how about, I looked at the calendar. I go, how about you mail it on this day? You ship it to me this day. So I'll come home. I'll come home. I'll arrive at home, and it'll be on my porch that night, and I was so excited. And he's like, all right. And I sent him the money, and I go to China. I'm in China having a crazy time. And now I'm finally coming home, and I'm so excited. And the plane lands. I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to see that Glenn Strange. I can't wait to put it in the glass case, and add it to the Frankensteins here. And I get home, like this limo drops me off, and I run up to the front porch, and I'm like, where's the box? There's no box here. I call Frank. It wasn't too late, so I call him. I go, Frank. I go, what happened? Did you ship it? Do you have the tracking number? He said, well, let me tell you something. He said, let me tell you something. I started looking at it, and I was boxing it up, and I just fell in love with it all over again. I'm like, what? I go, no, please, no. And he goes, yeah, I'm going to keep it for now. And I was like crushed. I'm like, oh my God. I was so excited to get this mask. And I'm like, you're killing me, man. So he so that's how it got this little nick. He accidentally knocked it over in his kitchen and gave it that little scratch on the brow there. But I'm gonna fix that. But you know, I told his brother the story. I go, I got a funny story for you. And here it is, though. It's finally here, and it's so neat being able to compare it to the other prototype. They're both from that Pat Newman 60s calendar mold. Just amazing. But like I was saying, this one's it's got nicer details all over the place. You know, this one, granted, this one was painted with the old rubber cement technique. You painters out there will know what I'm talking about. So it was kind of a thicker paint job, but you could just tell that this one's got finer details all over it compared to the later pull. Who knows how many they, you know, I know there were other pulls out of that mold back in the day, like guys would sneak, you know, pulls out of the old mold and sell them out the back door or bring them to other painters and have them done. So they are out there. There are copies of this out there, but they're unauthorized. They were not put out by Don Post Studios since the 60s. But man, seeing this full-size Glenn Strange from the real mold is just amazing. I've got two of them here, which I never thought I would have in a million years. So, no doubt one of my favorite pieces to come out of the Frankenshrine. And it has a funny story that just reminds me of Frank. Every time I look at this thing, I'll never forget him on the phone just saying, well, I fell in love with it all over again. You're not kidding it. You know, so, oh God, there it is. So cool. An amazing Frankenstein. And just one more thing to come out of the Frankenshrine. And so like I was saying, he acquired this probably around 83, straight from the people at Don Post Studios. And, you know, he had it foam filled before it arrived. And there it is. It sat this whole time. So just amazing that thing, you know, it got a little battle damage there. But man, I'm so happy that it's intact. And we can look at this thing here today. A little part of Don Post history that is just so cool because it's from the original 60s calendar mold.